This video is sponsored by Dubby Jitterless Energy Blend. Click on the link in the description and use the code PackerMan to save 10% on any order.
Well, it's the old swan song for the old Auto Club Speedway. What's the future going to look like for the track? We don't know, quite frankly, because a lot of its land was sold for over $500 million. But from what we've heard, it's going to continue on as a short track. Will that actually happen? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. What we did see was a pretty solid cup race on Sunday. How solid? I mean, it wasn't great, but personally, overall, I thought it was just a teensy bit better than Daytona. Just a little bit. So let's get into it. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to this edition of The Fuel, where we are going to be talking about the 2023 Pala Casino 400 at the Auto Club Speedway, the final cup race at Auto Club Speedway before its supposed reconfiguration. Again, I don't know if that's actually going to happen or if this is going to be the last time ever at Auto Club. So let's get into it. There was no practice or qualifying for this race, so Christopher Bell would start from the pole based on the rule book. And let me tell you something, when these guys got started, I mean, it had rained and snowed. Yes, snow in Southern California. Weather's been crazy over the past week. I mean, you had snow in California, and Oklahoma got gobsmacked by tornadoes. It's just been absolutely crazy. But when they actually finally managed to get onto the track for the first time, it was the dustiest thing you ever seen in your life. Like, it was just off the racetrack. And so as a result, they had a competition caution at lap 16, which is pretty standard fare. There were a couple of cautions in the first stage. One was Keselowski spinning off of turn 2, but there wasn't really much to do with that one. Trackhouse Racing was pretty much in command of this race right from the get-go. He definitely had one of the cars to beat, at least in the first two stages and for much of stage 3 as well. And then we had the start of stage 2, and we had two big rivalries up front. Hamlin versus Chastain and Logano versus Busch. Those guys could never seem to get away from each other. But the second stage of this race was when it really started going downhill. I mean, after a caution, you had Truex the rules a little bit as far as loose wheels are concerned, and they made it situational like they fucking should have to begin with. But since Truex lost the wheel out on the track, it would end up being a 2-lap penalty, and he would also lose 2 crew members, which I believe was the left side tire jack, one of the tire changers, and the crew and the jackman ended up being suspended. And then we had probably the lowest point of this race. He had a fast car. I mean, it was just a mess. And it was at this point, it's like, man, this race has gone way downhill. It would slowly but surely start to pick itself back up, though, thank God, because the racing was actually still pretty good. Kyle Busch actually had to go to the back due to a speeding penalty, but ended up fighting his way back towards the front, and he was right there in second at the end of the second stage, which was won by Chastain. Harvick led the start of stage number 3, but had one more caution when Ty Dillon came to a stop on the apron. But then the rest of the race went caution-free, which was about a little over 50 laps or so. And that allowed for some pretty good strategies and shit. And I was like, okay, this is actually going to be pretty interesting. We have a long green run to the finish. Chastain took the lead back on lap 146. We had 4 wide for second, with Busch powering his way back up there. And he was right on Chastain right up until they did the green flag pit stops for tires, because, let's be honest here, this track was basically like Darlington in that sense, where tires were super important. I mean, the fall off was up to 3 seconds at the end of the run, so tires were big in this case. But I said this would get interesting if it went green, and Elliott was coming towards the front as well. Logano kicked off green flag stops, but then everybody was just right on his heels afterwards. And Kyle Busch actually managed to get off of pit road ahead of Chastain, and that was the key. Not to mention the fact that they also made some adjustments on Busch's car, which made it faster on the longer runs. And he was able to pull away from everybody. That's pretty impressive. And it's also his 61st win. And let's be completely honest here. He could have won all three of these first couple races. I mean, he could have won the Clash. He could have won the Daytona 500. If not for the bullshit at the end of that race. I mean, the fact that it's only taken him 2 points races to win, it's like, oh, this is not what the rest of the field wanted to see. Because if they're this good this early, like I said, it's the Kyle Busch Revenge Tour. You know, and it's starting now. So, what did I think of this race overall? Well, let's take a look at the statistics. We had 28 lead changes overall. Only 6 of them were pure, but, you know, it is what it is. We had 3,512 green flag passes. The Xfinity race actually had more, which is kind of shocking for a shorter race, might I add. Still came out to a pretty good average, 21.7 per green flag lap, which is actually pretty good. We had 6 overall cautions, not counting the stage cautions, obviously. And Ross Chastain was the lap leader with 91 laps. So my final thoughts on this race, I thought it was an alright race. I mean, the middle portion of this race was dog shit, especially with that pile up on the restart. God, I hate caution flags. I understand why they're necessary, but I would rather the race run green, which I'm glad it did at the end and got a long green flag run to end the race, so that helped somewhat. So overall, I thought this was a solid race. It wasn't great by any stretch of the imagination, especially with the caution flags. But I mean, we had some pretty good racing and some strategy near the end, and Kyle Busch ends up with the win, and that's really all I have to say. My final rating for the 2023 Pala Casino 400 is a 6 out of 10.
What's happening, ladies and germs? Thank you for watching tonight's video. If you're interested in sponsoring the channel, there is a link to my Patreon down in the description box below. Otherwise, hit like and subscribe if you want to continue watching great content like you saw today. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out.